This will be a good one. Undefined by Monocrack. I know my name's on there, but I didn't really write any of this story. I did a little bit of QC on a couple chapters here and there, and a little bit of discussion in general. I did like maybe 0.5% of the total work put into this story. But Mono, I know Mono very well, and this will be quite a disturbing revelation when he finds out I'm doing this. I'm not going to tell him a thing until this video is released. Let's just get on with it. Sensei may be a miracle, but his journey hadn't started in Kivodos. A past carved by apathy in an academic district with no future. There, he met a boy who belonged to no one. Quiet, cornered, climbing with nothing below. Sieving through his books and blood, he brought light to eyes that were long devoid of hope. A light that had died when he vanished into the world of Blue Archive. After the hells of the Chroma, the fragment of his past finally returns to him. A male student named Carmine Rossetti, a student of undefined ambition. Dude, that's the name of the fic. Chapter 1, Ashes Ignited. Chapter by Monocrack. Okay, so I'm attributed to only the chapter that I actually worked on, which is chapter 14. That's enough. He's finished. In a class hallway ripped from a vintage photograph documenting workplace conditions, the noise of lead striking tissue squishes the silence of the derelict building. A boy of long, velvet-streaked black hair stares at the pulp of what was once another boy's cranium. The reds and blues of blood mixing with dust as the provoker turned victim splayed against the drywall. It's not the first time he's committed to such violence, as he's always had to stand his ground when thrusted into these situations. Regardless of what Carrie puts into remaining neutral, people still miraculously find the gall to provoke his passiveness. 17 years old, he hollows out their skulls with a long lead radiator pipe. He didn't need anything fancy to defend himself, and he can get the job done. Pipes just happen to break less than knives, at least when students as sloppy as these put their hand-to-hand ineptitude on display. The high school he's in, hell, the entire district has always been a breeding ground for potent territorial disputes. This school in particular was nowhere near any urban centers, and suburban counties were not so generous either. Most students lived within the confines of the school's classrooms and break rooms, while others scavenged the desolate concrete jungle that houses the excuse of an establishment. These pests were poking his patience for the 5th time this week. All of these talks about payments, debts, and tributes, you'd almost think they were in ancient Greece with demands of earth and water. He never had anything to offer, but he's never needed to consider such trivial matters. The battery of his collectors was his methods of extending such deadlines. A beast, he rears his crimson irises towards 3 other misfits. These boys were accompanying the person beneath him, at least before he pounded his head in. His pipe still wept of fresh blood, and the stink of rust elevated the air. With how adorned his appearance was, he reeked with beautiful brutality. He takes his foot off the student's abdomen, letting shock handle the rest. Marching toward the 3 students, he trudges the pipe along the floorboards like a misplaced slasher, never loosening his anger-induced expression.
Listen, Carmine, we never wanted any harm,
one of the boys chatters, taking a step back to ease the uncomfortable distance. Every student looked the same, with their stereotypical masses of black and brown hair. There was a particular reason as to why Carmine streaked his hair violet, but this wasn't up for discussion.
Oh, you'll back off, okay? Don't even do anything rash, you hear me?
Barked another boy, hesitating to lift a handcrafted shank in his left hand. His teeth clenched with fury as he felt doom loom over him. The third boy remained silent, perhaps out of acceptance or fear. His name was known as the Mother... the Mother... His name was known amongst the upper... His name was known amongst the upper, more ruthless students, as they were wrathful over the walking storm that churned up their control over the school. Carmine halts, his leather boots crushing noises out of the dampened planks below. At 5'10", he eclipses his adversaries both physically and psychologically, his weapon lengthy for his stature. Handsome in the way statues are, expression cold, his black blazer and gray undershirt were decorated by a lackluster ring necklace. A few fingers wore silver rings, glistening under the falling sunlight, and his ears were framed by helix and brace earrings, though none were actual piercings. An unusually fashionable boy in a world painted gray. He remembered a certain someone complimenting his looks, the one good thing that hadn't died under the depths of his school's despair, but they were long gone. All that remains was him and his aimless reclusiveness. He took a moment to consider his response, leaving the boys emotionally one-sided as he decided how to scope his opinion of them. For a moment, his harmful aura abates. I don't care what you do, just leave me alone. You're fine to look or come close, but I will tear you a new face if you have a problem with me. Take care of your friend, if you consider him one. With a sharp voice, he expects them to act on their own accord. Oh. The boys never engaged him, so he never considered them as enemies. They were likely first years, poor underclassmen who got roped to dinner by gangs. He didn't care. He had a better place to be for the evening, especially with the curfew coming to the district. Resting his arms, he withdraws from the hallway of classrooms, entering a nearby corridor to give them privacy. He whips his pipe away from him, splashing the excess blood across the stained wall to the right. He didn't want to leave any evidence of where he was heading. The network of halls was an endless sequence of paths with rooms built in sporadic intervals. Any room could have been for anything, and even if the school was in commission, the layout was bound to send people's patience ablaze. It was a hideous reflection of how the district viewed them. The further he swam to the basement's rooms, the more he separated from the sins above. Loneliness was a great privilege, especially if it meant you could have your own little corners to rest. Above the monotony of it all, he still remembers a particular room. A room that could separate him from the rest of this hellbound city, even for just a few minutes. It was the only place that could put him at ease, and it was deep enough into the school's basements to never be throttled. The voices of his past exchanges echo back to him, and they grow more prominent as he trudges towards the room. He reflects on memories he made once he wasn't so alone. What have you been doing this whole time? Surely there isn't a lot to do in a place like this. The man wore a black sweater with beige pants, walking aside Carmine. It seems that you took my advice about not standing out. The school had a tendency to crush plants that weren't weeds. The man was bound to be pursued if he were to look valuable. Back then, Carmine didn't look so special, having no jewelry or colored hair. He was simply another boy. Loud and clear, we don't want to undergo another excursion. The man scratches his nape with an uncomfortable expression, lighthearted with his complaints. It was only his second day here, and he had already been attacked by the other students. They likely wanted to ensure no trace of the school's authority brushed the city. To answer your question, not much. I plan on doing nothing from fall to spring. It's not like I can do anything else. I don't care about control. It's been 3 months since he was expelled from his former estate. 15 years of mindless studying, all for naught. Despite how well he performed, or how insightful he was towards significant matters, his peers always seemed to have an issue with his perspective. People got upset rather quickly when presenting with a compelling argument. The man released a long sigh, expelling his frustration. I'm going to be honest, I'm aware I'm not supposed to be here. No kidding. You should have never come here. Carmine had never seen teachers here before, but he knew why. It was unbelievable to think anyone would willingly come here. Were you forced or something? There's no explanation for your attendance. The man looks ahead rather than toward Carmine, contemplating. I guess it's partially my fault. I was trying to pitch a better system for the district. I had gone up to the school board and everything. I guess I underestimated how little they cared about people like you, and they probably sent me here to drown me out. As much as I detest their negligence, I didn't want to give up being a teacher either. That was not looking good for me. You noticed the rot too? Yeah, everyone's so dead. It's not a good look for children, and there's certainly no joy to be had from it either. It's very disappointing. The man had a grandiose imagination for his career, making his students happy with well-taught lessons and hearty emotions. He must have had amazing patience, but nothing was going to cure a world like this. They were alone in the moment, their shoes silently sliding across the floorboards as they marched deeper into the school. Carmine had a destination in mind, but more importantly, he wanted to get the teacher away from the people above him. I'm just another one of these students to you, aren't I? I'm worthless, but I try to make the most out of what I have. I've been scavenging books just to have some resemblance of education. I'm hoping that eventually it will pay off. I don't have the experience necessary to dig myself out of here. I guess that is quite a novelty here, the man responds. A small break room deep in the network of directionless classrooms. It's where he's been living for the past few months, stockpiling and reading books to pass the time. On occasion, in the annex building to either surge, hostile students will engage him, hoping to pour something out of his pockets. The first few weeks were brutal, but the school teaches people how to steal blood. By dumb luck, his name was a good match with his will to demolish his adversaries. He was capable of reciprocating the violence upon him threefold, and he built a reputation because of it. At least, it helped with keeping him alone. They finally arrived at the quiet gray door. Nothing special, no signs or markings, just another room in the sea of gray. You can stay here for your time. There's no hope trying to find shelter out there, and I don't mind having you around. Whether you trust me or not, I don't mind. He opens the door, welcoming the man inside. The yelling of the upper floors ceased as he shut the door behind them, granting a tranquil atmosphere to the place. The room didn't have too much to work with. A large cornered wooden table in the center, bordered by 2 rusty black couches. Along the left wall was a huge bookshelf with no discernible organization. It certainly seemed as if someone had shoved anything they could find into it. The cabinets had rations and bottles, supplies Carmine secured about a week ago. For once, he had actually demanded supplies from another gang, and he encouraged them after leaving their headquarters slathered in the students' blood. He left the younger students alone. They never wanted anything to do with him. It was the filthy upperclassmen that needed to be corrected. The supplies in these cabinets were blood money, but it was better than running in the sun scavenging. He wouldn't tell Sensei about this, though. If he had to, he would do it again to ensure the man didn't have to wander outside, and he didn't want him to witness the violence. It's been a while since I've seen something normal. The man walked around the room, inspecting the furniture and walls with great attention. It wasn't a pretty sight, but he sympathized with his relief. Carmine wasn't too charmed by the corner he crafted for himself, but it was the best he could assemble. I'd apologize for the conditions, but you know enough to understand why I'm not. Sorry. I'll provide you with supplies to stay down here. No windows or sunlight, but at least you won't get hurt. Carmine sits on a couch, idling his eyes and slouching to clock out for the day. It didn't really matter if he slept in the morning or evening. Any rest was fair game. Is it alright if I sit here? The man gingerly requested Carmine. Feel free. For as long as you want, this room is yours as well. The boy doesn't move. He doesn't have to. A few seconds later, the man sits next to Carmine. Despite the man being a few inches taller, they were the same height when seated. It made it easier to face each other. Listen, as kind as it is, I don't want you to have to care for me. You're just a kid. You shouldn't have to care for an adult, even in a place like this. The man looks disappointed, not wanting his role as an adult to be reversed. Whether out of pride or not, he didn't want to freeload. Carmine had little to no experience with adults, but he had a general idea of what that meant. Alright, I have an idea then. Carmine pulls his posture forward, clasping his hands together in front of him. The man brings his attention back to Carmine, no longer staring into his mind. He wasn't sure what the boy would want from him. Anything was fair game in this school. His spine crawled with dread at the thought. I hope you don't have anything violent in mind. I don't have what it takes to harm anyone, let alone a kid. No, it's nothing of the sort. I actually want you to be my teacher. Carmine's expression doesn't shift, but the man certainly does. His eyes widen, straightening himself at the request, jump-scared by this response bringing relief. You want me to teach you? Would you actually be interested in that? The man's not sure what he'll say, remaining intrigued at the prospect. He remembered what he mentioned before about his book collection, but it seemed like something just passed the time. He didn't think the kid would want to go further with it. All I've had to work with are books. I want to know what I'm capable of, so when I walk out of here, I may have an idea of what's in store for me. These textbooks have long been exhausted, and I've had so many questions to ask. Do you think you can do that for me? Unexpectedly, Carmine tries his best to crack a smile for him. It's been a long time since he considered the idea, but it seemed fitting. The man is somewhat startled by this newfound desire. I think this could work. I've been wanting to do something meaningful with the student. Will this make up for everything you've offered to me? I don't want you to consider any of this as a debt, or the idea that you owe me. I'm sick of the concept. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to being your teacher here, then. Though I should probably get your name first. Would that be okay? The man's expression is much brighter now, as if a storm had been lifted off his shoulders. He was still hesitant about this relationship, however. The path to heaven starts in hell, he assumed. Carmine Rossetti, second-year student. It's a pleasure to meet you, signore. He learned about that word from a book covering Sicilian history, since many figures were addressed like this. It seemed fitting for the occasion, and he liked how the word rolled off its tongue. He couldn't pull off the accent, though. Signore. The man's heart flooded to being referred to, even if it wasn't teacher. To him, the boy was beyond interesting. He must have learned anything he could have gotten his hands on. I'm curious to know where you got that word. Are you Italian? The boy considered that for a second, reciting what nationality that was. No, I'm not. Honestly, I don't know what I am, or how I am compared to someone normal. I simply exist. He's never needed to contemplate such ideas. There wasn't anything productive to get out of learning about his upbringing. Well, I'm happy with the name you're given. It's a pleasure to meet you, Carmine. He brought forth a hand to shake, though he was unsure if he would actually reciprocate it. To his surprise, the boy gently responded to his gesture, gripping his hand softly. The lack of grip strength initially surprised the man, but he remembered how experienced these kids were. First things first, I should teach you how to give a good handshake. It's a very essential aspect of being a man. Put a good, tight grip into it, okay? The boy was concerned about hurting him, and he could tell. Like this? Skeptically, he tightens his muscles of his fingers and palm, and the man responds with equal strength. Strangely, the commitment brought more warmth to the interaction, and it felt like a proper greeting now. Now that's more like it. We'll continue practicing that in the future. The man looks at Cadence's reluctant expression with an eager smile, enjoying the training lesson. He's got a lot on his mind for what he could offer to his first student. Perhaps I should teach you how to fight as well. It would definitely help, though it's got a lot to do with personal grit. How about it? I'll have to turn that down. These students aren't evil at heart. It's the result of negligence by both parents and authorities. I don't want to harm someone for any reason, and I'd hesitate too much. An honest man he was, no malice or bloodlust reached from his heart. I guess that works for both of us. I'm not actively violent unless I have no choice. If we ever have to go outside, I'll protect you. I'm sure I can. He's unsure of what encounters they'll have, but he has to keep his teacher hidden. He didn't want to lose the one good thing that's come to his life so far. How long is the rest of this? Does he go to Kibota's in this chapter? Does he? Don't worry, I won't be going anywhere. I understand the importance of that. Feel free to get comfortable. You're more than a guest to me. You're my teacher, Signore. You'll get used to calling him that more. It brought a rather pleasurable feeling. He knew this relationship wasn't built to last. The world wouldn't allow that. Regardless, he'll make the most of what he had, like always. I'm thankful. His misery had only grown ever since he disappeared. A few months of being a student, and he never came back to the room. Carmi knew the man heeded his warnings, and yet he still managed to disappear. He remembered how frantically his search was, trying to locate him, or his corpse, but nothing came from his efforts. 6 months of tutorship, all to collapse in under a day. He hadn't felt betrayed. He knew that the man could have fed eventually, and it would have been justified. It's as he said before. He should have never come here in the first place. Still, he was so enthusiastic about teaching him, even with how pitiful the conditions were. It was inconceivable to think he was that inconsiderate. It's possible he was abducted, but nobody had the patience to plan something like that over the course of months. The man should have been safe under his jurisdiction. His frustration grew as he recalled his emotion from that day, growing increasingly spiteful as he approached the same room where it all began. That man was everything to him. He offered everything he knew and had, and he responded in kind. They discussed everything together, from baseline mathematics and writing comprehension to niche subjects of history and theology. He remembered how delighted the man was to witness his newfound adaptability, his knack of learning. The kid was full of unbridled desire, wishing to learn any minuscule detail of the lessons given to him, like a kid devouring a family meal. He was smart. The man always found opportunities to emphasize that. Even if a career was out of sight, he wanted to use his aptitude for learning to please others and himself. It was a simpler time, far better than what came before. His wonder had brought in tenfold with that man by his side, something mere books would have never accomplished. Learning was satisfying with a competent, patient teacher, and he was irreconcilably angry at his loss. A rose born from ashes left to wither and thorn under a glass casing. That man was benevolent to the very core. It was the very reason why they even met. His disappearance could have not been because of him. Had to have been an external factor, but it was far too late to discover the truth. Nothing could be done. His second year had already commenced, and he had only grown bitter. He wanted to maintain that semblance of hope and kindness, to maintain the positivity that the man encouraged him to accept, but it was difficult to keep that fire burning in a world so bleak. He hadn't grown more violent, at least. The man never entertained his strength and would have hurt, even if it wasn't self-defense. Violence was never an answer, he said. Naive, but optimistic. It was an interesting luxury. In moments, the door shut behind him. His pipe loosened and clashed against the wall. Ignorant of the sentimentality, he trudged to the other side of the break room, cranking a metal sink to wash his hands. The cold water did little to ease his discontent. He changed out of his blazers and put on a simple t-shirt with shorts, trying to let his body calm down on the couch. The room hadn't changed at all since he disappeared. The table was still covered with all sorts of study materials and files. Many days were spent with him, digging through data to learn more about the local area and the district halls the school belonged to, but most stories were the same. If the problem children wanted to be ideologically alone, so be it. Leave them alone in their own low pocket world. At least in this corner of the school, he was as clean and ordinary as he could get. His eyes drift among the contents of the table, noticing a packet of square tissues he used to clean his wounds. He wasn't hurt in that moment, but he felt gravitated to seizing a few slices. In the past, the man tried everything he could to brighten him up, whether it was knowledge or with crafts. In a moment of quiet inspiration, Carmen chose to indulge by himself. He hastily pushed the numerous items in front of him on the table, haphazardly clearing a space to work with. The square paper was dual-wide on both sides, but it would do. It was about as long as his forearm, so the final product wouldn't be too small. He pulls a nearby hairband to tie his locks behind his back. Neck! He pulls a nearby hairband to tie his locks behind his neck, letting his hair gently brush over his shoulder. With dexterity, he begins to pinch the edges of the tissue with clean fervor, putting great care into every fold and action. Out of the crafts that the man taught him, it was origami that ended up sticking well, since it was an activity that brought beauty out of raw forms. It was a creation he could design through articulation rather than strength. He carefully folded the paper in half, segmenting it into subsections of triangles, wings, and corners. In a few minutes, he had designed what seemed to be akin to an airplane, but his vision was beyond that. He took a pocket knife and sliced off the subset of the tissue, leaving what seemed to be a simple triangle fold. He opened the fold to reveal a concise pentagonal design, proceeding to dice the page with numerous perpendicular creases to segment each individual aspect, crunching systematically to allow the folds to naturally bend at the preset lines. Bundling together in a neat centroid, he spirals and compacts the paper into petals and leaves, unfurling what was once a pentagon into a crispy rose origami. He carefully pinches the ends of the leaves to make each angle sharper, until eventually he was left with a perfectly pentametric flower. It was the wrong color, and the material was flimsy, but he did the best he could, silently basking in pride at the pocket-sized beauty. With this, he gently placed the plant on the desk before him, sliding it into a few dozen more roses. Each one represented a day without his teacher, a daily exercise to protect his humanity. If only that man were still around to see this, he was sure he would have been proud. It would have been a ritual to mourn him, but he knew he wasn't good enough to be happy forever. With that thought, the darkness in his heart crept back into his head, as a temporary victory shifted into loneliness. Given enough time, he was sure he'd lose his passion for the little gems that he treasured, and eventually he'd return to Origin. He still had 2 to 3 years left ahead of him here. All he could do was remain in emotionless silence. At least, that's what he planned on doing, until he noticed something unusual on his desk. I could have sworn this wasn't here before. Amongst the death of hues, with ordinary pencils, cups, and folders, he notices a particularly blue and white folder packed into a basket of duller yellow folders. It radiated with light with how much it stood out, like a rare item randomly spawning in an ordinary building. He carefully pulled the basket toward him. Amongst his teacher's documents, he never used anything this pristine. With one hand, he pulls the item upwards, and an unusual insignia comes into view, covering the upper half of the page. Some kind of crosshair and a perpendicular pattern with circles orbiting its center. Below it was a shaded rectangular space, with a prompt at the bottom to grant a handwritten signature. Curiously, Carmen retrieved a pen from a nearby utensil cup, steadily correcting his posture to write his name. It took a few months for the man to teach him how to write in cursive. He insisted on learning the skill in case he were to be a professional in the future, though he was skeptical about how fancy it should have been. Reciting his practice, he elaborately draws out an elongated signature of his last name, ensuring to leave an extra long tail for the final letter. It's been some time since I've done that. As if the paper was reacting to being written, it begins to glow with an anomalous light. He shielded his eyes with both arms as the paper angrily violently its radiance. As the paper angrily violently its radiance in the entire room. Shown its radiance? I'm not sure. Illuminating the scene like never before. In seconds, his vision had completely collapsed into a blue and white canvas, robbing of any semblance of senses, and his vision begins to craft a sight that can only be described as digitized. As if his mind had been put in a machine, his vision goes full screen on what appears to be a computer interface. The Carmen had never witnessed technology on that level before. Random symbols and words appear between the squares being formed in front of him, and a large S generates in the center of the space, crafted out of rotated triangles. His body in the real world remains still, his hands drifting back to his legs as the light occupies his brain. He hears a distinctive clicking on a keyboard as a message in front of him is typed out in simple red letters. To Capernaum, depart the Nazarene. Of Nain was loose the breathless cry. I could have said all of that wrong. What does that mean? What's happening? He's too delirious with the information overload to properly convey emotion, allowing the vision before him to take its course like a drug. He's not panicked to react in any way, as if he was experiencing an eternity all in one setting, swimming in a sea of thoughts that didn't feel like his. When the screen faded away, the luminance of the computerized vision drifted into an ordinary's perspective. His eyes corrected toward what they were meant to be doing, but his senses didn't link back to the break room. Before him, he can see a long navy blue seating row with large beveled windows behind it. He hears the roar of an engine, and the metallic ground below him shakes violently as the setting grinds to life. He's still wearing the same clothes as before, but he's no longer on the couch. He tries to open his eyes wider, but his vision is too hazy to study any details. An overwhelming exhaustion corrupts his body, as if he was walking endlessly for days without rest. His legs were out of commission, muscles grieving under the strain. Is anyone else here? Next stop, Shiratori City. An announcer intercom all around him bellows with a calm demeanor. Am I in a car? Where am I right now? I need to get back. He tries to move, but the folder seems to enslave him with how much energy he's lost. No power to leave the transit, as he hopelessly hears the sliding doors around him shut tight, the vehicle shifting gears to build speed. In a minute, the vehicle is at its maximum speed, entering some kind of tunnel and blocking out the light. With nothing to give, both physically and mentally, the boy passes out in sullen peace. If the world was trying to take him somewhere, he was in no position to object. He quietly listened to the gentle rumbling of handles as he transported to the unknown destination. After what felt like hours, he awakened again, begrudgingly sitting up from the seating. To his horror, he was still in transit. He was able to observe his surroundings with better clarity, and he realized by the length of the vehicle that this was no ordinary transit. And this must be some kind of high-speed railway. The vehicle was very calm despite how far we're moving. He recited the kinds of trains that the man taught him about, and how he had rode one of these to arrive here. Must have been all the way out in some distant urban center. He indeed was the only person in that segment. There was nobody else, and the red letters in the message intercom above him declared that the destination was Shiratori City. The windows in front of him now bore light, though this time around it was natural. Daybreak brought an orange twilight sunrise over the ocean horizon before him, casting a beautiful sight. It helped calm down his nerves, contrasting the insane circumstances that led him here. The man always said that the sky and sun were beautiful. This had to be what he meant. The darkness in his heart abated, stolen by the warmth of the rays. If he wasn't so misplaced, he could have fallen asleep again. He couldn't remember how long it had been since he was able to appreciate something that wasn't desolate. It's a beautiful sight, isn't it? A calm, feminine voice pierces the silence to his right. Who said that? Carmine's heart jumps to the unexpected voice. A woman. He settles his eyes on another person sitting beside him, who definitely wasn't there before. It had been some time since he's actually seen a girl, but he recognizes the long hair and voice. She was wearing a pristine white uniform, embroidered with yellow stars, pockets, and blue badges with sashes. A formal attire, as if she were some powerful adult. Her pastel blue hair was tied in a single braid on her left shoulder, and on the underside of her hair was a pastel pink layer, draped behind her like a cape. Who are you? What's happening? He mustered his voice, despite the underlying fatigue. I won't tell you much, but you are going to a very special place. If a stranger tells you that, bro, you're fearing for your life. I know I haven't made much commentary so far, but I do want to finish the chapter before I make some notes. It's pretty long, so I don't want to interrupt too much. Her voice was calm and collected, though he was put off by the implication of only him going somewhere. Surely she was going somewhere too. Are you the one who brought me here? He wanted to stand up and confront her, like he would with the students of his school, but he was hesitant to push himself outwards in such an unknown place. A new reality has been created, one born of adulthood, responsibility, and obligation. The person before has done well. You will be okay. She speaks with a reverence that's unexplainable, speaking of world building and responsibilities as if she were some kind of god. Regardless, this was too vague to be acceptable. She didn't even answer his question. Where are you sending me? Send me back. I'm not going to belong to whatever world you created. Despite dreaming of being anywhere but that school, the school was at least real and familiar. He held memories there that he did not want to let go, memories to treasure and protect. He wasn't going to lose everything because some girl on a railway told him otherwise. Regardless of your experiences, you'll find your name. Everything in this is in place for you to prosper, Carmine. The boy startled to learn that she knew his name. For the first time in a while, a chill crawled up his spine. At least tell me your name, he sternly requests. In time, you will forget this conversation. Do not worry, though. Your future is settled. We will never meet again. Aw, how unfortunate. After she stated the frustratingly indirect response, an overwhelming exhaustion once again took over his mind space, as his senses blurred into oblivion. In seconds, he passed out again, blanketed by the eerie warmth of the sunrise. The girl sitting by him simply loosened a small smile, as the railway continued to barrel toward heaven. The last thing he remembered is the expansive ocean being replaced in the window by an enormous city of white buildings, with a colossal beacon of light tearing the halo-ridden sky into two. Alright, we finally got to the Blue Archive part of the story. Now, What Mono does that I'm pretty bad at is descriptivism. Mono does a pretty good and extensive job of describing the setting to a great extent. So what I want to talk about specifically, and this is going to take a while since I didn't do any pausing during the story. I tried not to. So now we're going to go back and look over it a little bit. When we're in dialogue, we're in active dialogue, the description usually changes to what the characters are doing and what they're thinking. So we have, this line. This is all fine. I think it was mostly when he started talking to Sensei, because that's when there's a lot more pausing and silence in their discussion to let the experience linger a little bit. In this discussion with these two delinquents that we'll never see again, the conversation is more fast-paced, and it's more the emotions are tenser and higher, and there's a lot more action going on, so it's easier to explain the action. When he's in conversation with Sensei and they're not really moving and they're really just having a deep discussion, then the description more leans towards how they're feeling, and that's what I wanted to talk about, but I just wanted to make sure that everything was mostly fine here. Yeah. So all of that was well and good. I don't really have much to say. When Sensei starts showing up, I did notice a couple of lines in the description around the dialogue that I have notes about. It's not inherently a problem, and I'm not making these suggestions as a statement of what was done here was wrong or what was done here was subpar. However, I think a difference between the way Mono writes and the way I write is that Mono, like I said, Mono is better at descriptivism and I'm better at subtlety because I write less. I use much fewer words, and I think I might make more assumptions about what the readers are able to imply. Maybe I don't, I'm not sure. But when I write and I write little description, the goal is that whatever I do reveal, whatever I want the reader to know should already be implied, and anything I don't need to do the reader to know, I usually don't state. So, unlike that, I don't know if this was clear while I was reading. A lot of it is written in present tense, and I when I was reading it, I just naturally swapped to past tense. There is a lot of back and forth. I think even like what's currently happening in this story also uses both tenses simultaneously, which is a little odd. Because, I mean, this flashback scene is also in past tense. I think the flow would be most natural if the whole story was just in past tense. The man had a grandiose imagination for his career, making his students happy with well-taught lessons and hearty emotions. He must have had amazing patience, but nothing was going to cure a world like this. I feel like that's mostly implied. Everyone's so dead, it's not a good look for children, and there's certainly no joy to be had from it either. It's very disappointing. I don't know. I find it weird that detail is revealed in narration. This story is seemingly written in third person omniscient and not third person limited, so it's fine to reveal these details even if Carmine doesn't know them or doesn't figure them out. I wanted to make comments about Carmine's statements being very blunt, but I think that's because Carmine is very blunt as a person, and that's why I ended up saying, like, as very literal as some of his statements are, and as much as he spills lines that I think would work better in subtext in general, I think because this is Carmine speaking, and he seems not to be very emotionally intelligent, or I don't know, maybe he is because he apparently only resorts to violence when he needs to. I mean, that is pretty mature of him. But in general, making a lot of these remarks to Sensei about how he probably doesn't matter and nothing matters, very, nihilistic, very cynical statements. I mean, a lot of them are very on the nose, but I do think with how Carmine is as a person, that's excusable. Now, if every character talked like this, that would be so insufferable. But I think Carmine sort of gets a pass for talking like that. And Sensei's lines kind of get too obvious in what he's trying to say. But if you're talking to a student, especially one that you expect might have more to learn than the average child, yeah, your dialogue can be a little more literal. So I guess the scenario they're in kind of works in this dialogue style's favor because it has the liberty of being a conversation between someone who's really inclined to make sure his student is understanding what he's talking about, and a student who has such a unique situation that it's hard to tell how much it can be implied and how much needs to be stated. And so just to be safe, he might as well state everything. To be honest, the fact that the dialogue is this way is like a little charming because it really shows how emotionally awkward Carmine and maybe even Sensei is. I don't have what it takes to harm anyone, let alone a kid. That's fine too. Like, when I'm talking about dialogue workshopping, it's mostly just for what kind of dialogue I like and not objectively better dialogue. Because I'm not a pro writer, so I can't say for sure. But in general, I like my dialogue to be a lot shorter. So it's like, I don't have what it takes to harm anyone, let alone a kid. I hope you don't have anything violent in mind. I can't handle that. Or, see, like, that's a little too open-ended, so this would be a little more precise. I don't have what it takes to harm anyone. I feel like you could imply it by saying, I can't handle that. I hope you don't have anything violent in mind. Or maybe he could start with saying something like, I hope it's not violent. That one little phrase. I hope it's not violent. And that, again, like, that's open-ended because it could mean that Sensei just doesn't want Carmine to keep resorting to violence rather than him being incapable of inflicting harm against students. But it's like, those kinds of details, it's really difficult to say. Sometimes you expect it, sometimes you imply it based on their character as a whole and not just what they say. Like, Sensei being such a nice person, you'd expect that he's never the type to hurt anyone. Especially when he's going all the way to this abandoned district in the hopes of being able to help some of the students here, you'd expect that he's not a violent person at all. So he doesn't really have to say it. Based on what kind of character he is, we can probably expect that of him. So that's why these little statements they make about themselves, sometimes they're not needed. And again, one more time, I excuse it for this story specifically because maybe it's better to leave things a little more literal so that there's no miscommunication. But in the context of simple, strong dialogue that leaves a lot to reader implication, we don't have to make any like flat statements, making truth statements about what kind of people they are. They just have to state lines that suggest what we assume about them, or they could, state lines. Obviously, they could state lines that reveal something that we didn't expect or reveals the opposite of what we expect. What's it called when it's different from what readers expect? Misdirection. But yeah, that's I don't have the strength to cover a second chapter of this length, even if we literally got like what the fuck. Oh, it's just the end of the prologue. Never mind. Well, I guess we could finish this. A couple of words. I don't know if that's Arona talking. I guess so. Plana, are you picking up on this? I am. A transfer request. What is this courier signal? It's written with flags. There's no dispatch protocol in this data. The headers are all wrong. This metadata is unreadable. It's just labeled transfer. Transfer? What's being transferred? This isn't our codex. I don't understand. Even in the other universe, I've never used this function. This signal doesn't originate from Kivotos. It's not from beyond either. There's no trail. Then where's it coming from? I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. Rejected? It was trying to access Shiratori City? How is that possible? City nodes don't just refuse entities, especially if they're students. Unless they weren't meant to receive it at all. Who's doing this? No Halo. It's a male, but he's not from this reality. Is this a student? Our networks don't recognize him. What is happening? It randomly chose a destination? An oil rig. I'm not seeing any rig with that destination in Kivotos. What? Did we just let it through? I don't know. Should we tell Sensei? Maybe. We'll need to see if anything else happens. I don't know who's speaking. I don't know who's speaking half the time. I'm just making random assumptions. Okay, now this chapter is at the same length as chapter 1. Ooh. Okay, so thanks for showing up for this little quick review. This is mostly a setup because I made this remark in a previous take, but I didn't keep it. I always joke with Bono that this story, this fanfic doesn't really seem like Blue Archive at all because it's got so little to do with Blue Archive when he's trying to escape the oil rig, but it's fine. I get to shit talk my friends, and so it's worth it. So, I guess I have to put the name of the chapter, not just the actual word chapter. Yeah, that's where that ends. I hope he doesn't see this bookmark or else it will be spoiled. But that will be Undefined again and write it. I just helped a little bit. Hurt comfort. Yeah, we will get there. Hopefully I find the strength to continue Undefined soon because this one's a little bit different from usual reviews because it's less to do with discussing the plot of Blue Archive in as well as writing technique. This one might end up just being a whole discussion on the writing technique differences between Moto and myself because until we get to see actual Blue Archive showing up, it's gonna be hard to talk about it. So this fanfic review is gonna be less about Blue Archive and mostly just about a writing discussion, writing workshop. With that, this video is over and thank you for watching. Until the next one.